Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of VAAS Live, where Chad and I, typically and our guest, give you long answers, which probably could be a little bit shorter. But the goal is to talk about everything fine art oriented. Sometimes we get into pop culture, we get into all kinds of techniques and skills and projects. We have an absolute blast. And alongside of myself is Chad Nuss, our very own humble wizard, our magic maestro of the pencil and pen. Sir, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. I always look forward to this time every week. So good to see you, and I look forward to the next 2 hours.
Absolutely. Me as well. And I tell you, Chad, it's been an amazing week of teaching classes. I know that you had some wonderful classes, but it's always a joy to join our online community from around the world to create together. And I just think it's an exhilarating time where we get to answer questions about techniques, skills, art history, influences, stories, or even just theory. It's always a good 2-hour session. And Chad, it's just been amazing watching what you've been working on. Look at this layout, guys and gals. It's absolutely amazing. Why don't you kind of start as we typically do, give us a little bit of background of what you're working on and where you're at and how it's going.
All right. Well, this is page 10. So last time we were on, I started this page and I explained that it's a bit of a jump because I finished page 6 and now I'm fast forwarding on page 10. And the reason for that is because page 7 is title page, and then page 8 and 9 is a 2-page spread. And I just got done doing 6 splash pages, so I really didn't want to do another one. So this one's a little bit more of a traditional page, although it is still a splash page with a panel inserted. So it's not quite a traditional fully paneled drawing, but it's getting there. So I wanted to work on this page next. So you'll see in the top panel that is Naomi and Dr. Polaris, and they are beginning their journey, not journey, but searching through this rubble. In the first 2 episodes, or the first 2 books, you saw a spacecraft come down and crash into one of the buildings, and so now they're investigating what happened, and this all of this rubble and wreckage, trying to find if there's any survivors. And then on the bottom panel is kind of an upshot looking down at Dr. Polaris, and he's about to discover the door to this spaceship so he can open it up and find out what's inside, and then that will continue the story from there. So that's where we're at today.
That's, I just realized I haven't asked you something. With the silence, are you expecting to have multiple books come out of this? Do you have it like already planned out? Is it like 7 books, 10 books? Or are you kind of creating the story as it goes organically?
I have an overarching framework, and it changes from time to time. When I first started this, I thought, oh man, I could get, if I did a book a year, I could do 40 books since I'm in my 40s. That would get me to my 80s. I
Right.
think that
Yeah.
was I think that was a bit ambitious. So between book 2 and now this book, I think it's been over a year. So there's no way that I'll be able to do one a year. So I'll probably cut it down just a little bit. But there is an overarching framework, and there is basically 4 movements, and I thought to myself I could do 10 books per movement or volume or whatever. But I think that's a bit ambitious. So I'll probably make some editing and cut it down a little bit so I can complete the story in my life. So, but this is a
Story.
passion
Yeah.
project, so it doesn't have a deadline or anything like that. It's just complete it as I can, and this has been an awesome opportunity to do these live streams so I can work on it. So I'm excited to get back to it.
I think it's funny because the way that I work, I write with like a framework, right? And I have an outline. I know what my goal is. I have it somewhat structured. But a lot of times the writing organically goes in a different direction than I ever anticipated. I ended up
Mhm.
fleshing out a character that was maybe just a hinted character a little bit more than I thought, or a relationship kind of develops differently than I anticipated. Does that happen to you with your graphic novels, or is it more, no, I've got the structure and I kind of stick with it?
Yeah, I've got a pretty set structure just because I know where I want the story to go. Hey, I will tell you just real quick, your second camera is
Oh,
right
thank
over your
you.
shoulder, so it's blurring
Blocking a little
out.
bit.
Yeah, it's blurring out because it's focused on the back of your neck rather than the painting.
Well,
So
we don't want that. as
Yeah.
nice of a back of a neck as that is, we don't want that for sure. Thank you, good sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. That's like that happened one time I was drawing, my beard got in front of one of my
That's
cameras.
right.
So,
I was like, that's a good looking beard.
hey, thank you. Thank you. But, yeah, so yeah, I have a pretty definitive structure. I think there's definitely opportunity for there to be some variation within that structure, but yeah, I mean, I haven't written the whole thing out. So like I I have kind of an outline form, and then as I get closer to that book, then I'll kind of narrow down what I want to get done within that book. And then once I get to the book, then I try to figure out what do I want to focus on? What's the beginning and ending of that
Gotcha.
story? And then just go from there. So yeah, so like this book, I know I've laid out the whole book, so I know exactly what's going to happen. It's just a matter now of drawing the pages, but I've not written out the specific like dialogue or what's going on in each page. I have written out kind of an outline of what each page will look like, and I've done thumbnails, which I've showed that before.
Yep.
But yeah, a page can change. So there's been already in the first 6, now 7 pages that I'm working on, some changes that have happened. And my splash page, pages 7 and 8, I'm going to change slightly because the scene that I'm drawing on this page was actually going to be the scene of the 2-page spread, and I didn't realize that I doubled it. So I looked at um, my thumbnails and didn't realize it was the exact same scene. And so I'm like, oh, I can't double that. So now this is from within inside the building looking out as they're looking through the rubbish, or whatever you call it, rubble. And that was going to be the first 2-page spread, but instead what I'm going to flip around the camera so the viewpoint shows them approaching the building from the outside looking in. So yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility as far as the pages are concerned. Sometimes, when you do thumbnails, that's like a first draft. You're just doing little sketches, and I I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do, and I try to, with the thumbnails, make sure the camera angles are different and positions are different. That's the advantage of thumbnailing out the whole story, is that you can see how it flows and how each page is arranged. You don't want, pages all looking the same, so I try to do a little bit of variety. Yeah, so it's flexibility within structure is basically what I'm trying to say. That's the
Which
long answer.
which I like because it gives you still, even though you're still staying focused and structured, as we keep saying, but it gives you the ability to adjust, right? To be
Yep.
still be creative within that process. And I think that's especially exhilarating because you are both the writer and the artist, right? So,
Yes.
a lot of times you can say, oh, this drawing isn't working out the way that I had written it, and I'm able to shift and adjust. Not saying that that doesn't happen with other collaborations and things like that, but it is nice that you are the sole creator, so you can have that flexibility and mindset of working through it as part of the overall process, right?
Yep. And no one knows the difference unless,
You
I
tell
I
them.
tell
That's
them.
right.
Yeah. So when they get the book, it's a finished product, but they don't realize how much self-editing has happened. I probably should I probably should have someone else look at it before I print it, but the first 2 I didn't. I just went with it. So I
I think
think
that's kind of
because
nice.
yeah, I think part of it is just, you put so much effort into it, and then, if you were to show someone else and they're like, well, maybe you should like change this page, you're like, "Ugh, it took so long to write and draw that page. I'm not changing it at this point." And I try to be a pretty good editor, but it's like I read the second book that I made just recently, and even then, as I was looking through, I was like, there's a couple mistakes that I would have done differently, but I don't regret it. It's like, I don't. It's not one of those things where I'm like, oh man, I now the book is ruined and I hope no one reads it. I mean,
Yep.
it's just I try to be realistic in the sense that the first work that you ever make is not going to be as good as the 10th work you've ever made. So I know
Right.
I'm in process. I know I'm going to look back at the first book and there's going to be things in there that I'm like, oh my gosh, can you believe that? Or that, perspective is way off, or that anatomy proportion is off, when at the time I thought it was right. And so I just try to give myself a lot of grace in that, to know that I'm growing and developing just like everyone else. So I know these books aren't going to be perfect, and they're not meant to be. So yeah, so I'm not really worried about all of that. So
Well, I think, because the timing, this is a personal project and a kind of a pet project. It's not like you're doing a monthly book, right?
yeah,
Where,
exactly. Yep.
you're constantly on it and in it and all that kind of stuff. And even then, I mean, I would imagine you look at some of the greats, and I'm sure that over a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year gap, they look back on their previous work and they're like, oh boy, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? Um, but it's also, a different mechanism of time, right? As an artist, you're developing and growing constantly, or hopefully you are. And stylistically you might change, or especially teaching, you realize some things that you teach, you're like, oh boy, I should do more of that, right? And then
Yeah.
next thing you know, that becomes a staple in your repertoire of tools. But I do think it's interesting how you approach that. I think it's awesome. I think that that's a very holistic approach, and in my opinion, a very healthy approach.
Yeah, thanks. I do want to just emphasize that, and this applies to anything. If you're, painting or drawing or whatever, or writing, whatever it is, like, I think sometimes we get so paralyzed because we want whatever we're doing right now to be like a home run. And the reality is, not everything you do is going to be a home run. Sometimes I was actually watching a video today about writing, and one of the things that they took a tip from Ray Bradbury, and he was just saying that quality comes from quantity. That really, and his advice was to write a short story once a week, and at the end of the year you'll have 50 plus short stories. And he
Yep.
said it's absolutely impossible that all 50 of those stories are going to be bad. There's going to be some good ones in there. And I think it's the same with art. Like, you just have to keep producing, keep drawing. Every one of your drawings is not going to be amazing, and it's okay. Like, we just get so paralyzed that if someone sees a drawing that's not very good, like, what does that mean as as an artist? How are people going to think about us, and all that kind of stuff? And you just kind of have to let all that go and realize that, okay, this drawing is not that great, but maybe the next one will be better because I've learned, from that drawing, or from that book that I just made, or whatever I'm doing, creating.
Yep.
You learn from that. So yeah, just gotta give yourself a break and
Create and just do
create.
it, and
That's
just
right.
keep creating. I agree.
Yep.
Which is, I'm going to kind of negate what we were just saying about sometimes it's okay to have mistakes, because I saw something today, Chad, that I shared with you earlier in between classes
Oh
that was
yeah.
very shocking to me.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it shouldn't be shocking because I see it happen in stuff all the time. But I want to share it with our audience because I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that you all, if you've watched some of our episodes or if you've taken any classes with us, Chad and I will often talk about how foreshortening is very challenging, and a lot of our students struggle with foreshortening, and it's hard for anybody. But I saw a piece of art from a new Spider-Man book, and this is a professional book that's going out into collections and stores and everywhere else. And Chad, the only way I can describe, and I don't want to give too much detail away, but it was a dynamic pose of a new version of Venom, and the foreground arm was doing something kind of like this, right? But
Hmm.
it's like a Japanese pose, kind of like what is it? Like say what are those guys called? Power Ranger kind of thing. And
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
doing this
Yeah.
like
Yep.
dynamic pose where like this, and the hand was supposed to be coming out like this. Like I like
Yes.
that's pretty much what the pose was supposed to be doing. They're doing like a jump kick forward at you, right? And
Yep.
and based on the pose of the body, the foot's coming forward, everything else, and the hands should be kind of coming straight at you. But what was interesting is you could very easily tell that they did not either invest the time or know how to do it, or an editor didn't catch it or something. But the hand was super teeny tiny like this size,
Yep.
instead of being foreshortened and big coming at you
Yep.
like this. And
Yep.
and so per scale, it was tucked way back. And not only that, you could see that they didn't know how to do fingers coming at you, guys, like this. So they
Yep.
just did this, like
Yeah.
that. And it
Yeah.
was like it was looking like something like this when it was meant to be like this jump kick of something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it looked bad,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was not good.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between, like we were talking about, having grace with yourself and realize not every drawing is going to be, perfect. There is a bit of a difference there because that person, like, they're getting paid to do that. Like, so you
Yeah.
have to do it right. It's different when you have a personal project that you're just doing and you're just trying to grow as an artist, a storyteller, whatever. And I don't want to say that just to qualify because I just said give yourself a
Right.
break, and now
Right.
we're
Right.
giving an
Exactly.
example of a time where here we're being critical of it. But the reality is, like, this person is
That's a
working
professional gig.
for
Yeah.
Marvel. Like, so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a little bit different. It's like, for example, if you're learning the violin and you're practicing and practicing and practicing, and you make mistakes, you have to be gentle with yourself because you're learning. But it's different if you're playing for the Philharmonic Orchestra and you've got a
Yes.
violin solo. Like, you better nail that, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. And I think this is an example where this person, not, it's, you want to be careful because you don't want to be overly critical and you want to be gracious and everything, but at the same time you're like, man, this person is operating at the highest level, and there's not really a whole lot of room for error at that level.
Yep.
Like, my background, I've worked in kitchens for years and years and years, and I worked on a corporate level and I worked at a fine dining level, and the fine dining level, it's a little bit different because there's an expectation of of what do I want to say, quality. Like, you want to make food that it tastes good and looks good, and there's a little bit less room for mistake. They're still gracious, especially if you're still learning, but at the same time, at that level, people are paying a lot more for the food than if you're working at a corporate restaurant. And so I think, it's the same in this situation that we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not what I would have expected to see quality wise coming from a Marvel book.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it just wasn't what I expected to see. And we can dive back into that. I do want to give a shout out to VFX Time here. Seth's haircut is shocking to me. Hello, guys. Well, hello, VFX Time. And this is for you. Here you go. Woo! Taking a little bit of a page out of the book of Mr. Chad here. And so I
Yeah.
got rid of the long locks and got it all trimmed up. Oh, yeah, got it way off there, VFX Time. Changed it up just a bit. My hair was starting to thin out a little bit, and I just thought it was time to make a little change. So there we go. I still got the hat though. It's funny. Somebody said the other day oh, what did they say? They go, "You're a completely different person with the hair," and then I took the hat off, and they're like, "You're a completely different person without the hat." And
Yeah.
it was absolutely hilarious. But I let my girls. I'm going to keep it like this for a little while, VFX Time, because my hair is thinning out on the top. And this is just easy maintenance. And, with everything I've got going on, it's pretty good. It's going to take me a little while to get used to it. Not quite fully used to it, but I do like it. It's pretty good. It's been a good experience. It's very comfortable. It's very comfortable. I will tell you, here in Kentucky, we get cold winters. So, Chad, I may be borrowing some beanies from you or some hats or something to keep my head a little bit more warm, because I think the winter's going to come and bite my head a little bit, but we'll be good. And no, it's absolutely wonderful. I really like it. Almost no maintenance. It's pretty nice. And I don't have to worry about how thin my hair was. I do say this. I always said to myself, I was never going to be one of those guys, Chad, that held on to the hair too long. Like I
Yep.
didn't, and that's fine. Some people love it. Some people are confident in it. I was not. So that's why VFX Time, I let it go. I hope you're doing great. It feels like it's been a while since I've seen you. We're so glad you're with us. And it's wonderful to see you. Matt, good to see you. Hope you're doing great. It's always so nice when you guys are on the live stream, and hope you're creating as well. Bum, bum, bum. But yeah, I just was shocked that was the quality that was coming out of such a high profile publisher. But again, I mean, they have what, 12 to 15 days to do a book. How fast they're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, how many books are being published nowadays? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot.
That's a big part of it. And that's, I even made that comment when we were talking about it earlier. It's like, yeah, I could get a book done that fast too if I didn't care about details or proportion or anatomy and that kind of thing. I can't. I know I sit here and talk about having, grace with yourself, but if I were at that level, I just could not. I could not turn in a drawing like that, but that's
I
just
agree.
me, maybe I need to take my own advice and say whatever. I'll just draw whatever. Doesn't matter.
Oh, sorry, I got a question here. Now just let the beard grow, and this will be the beard club. Yes, it would. And actually, I did just trim up the beard a little bit. Unfortunately, my beard doesn't look as nice as Chad's when it's that long. Mine starts getting all kind of wonky and weird, and so we'll see if I let that beard go out. I said now it's just two bald guys and beards, and I'm sitting there going, oh man, I don't know how that's going to work too much, but no, thanks VFX time, I really appreciate you. And the next question is, I see you're using a stick like tool to support your hand. Yes, this is called an artist maul, M-A-H-L, a maul or maul stick. And essentially, it can be a dowel rod, it can be a piece of wood, it can really be just about anything. I've used a ruler before, like a yardstick or anything. But what it does is it allows me to rest my hand without putting my hand on the painting, and it steadies my hand pretty significantly. So the maul stick is actually, I think, in many cases, a painter's best friend, because it allows me to shift and adjust. I can do arcs with it. I can do all kinds of different things with a maul stick. And so this VFX time is called a maul, M-A-H-L. And pretty much anything can be a maul stick. Whatever you got, it works great. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Next up, we've got Matt here, Chad. Let's see. Also, what are your thoughts about the statement, those who can do? Oh, boy. Buddy. My boy Matt out here throwing out the hot one early in the live stream. I love it. So, Chad, why don't you kind of give some background color to this question here that Matt's got?
Yeah, so this subject came up, what was it, 2 weeks ago that you were on, and it's something that we have, Seth and I have talked about on several occasions, and I had actually mentioned to him before we went on today that I was going to bring that up. So Matt, thank you. You read our minds, because we were going to talk about this very subject, because we were talking with some parents, and that came out. I forget how it came up, but basically we were just mentioning that phrase that people often say, is that those who can't do teach. And as teachers, we were both a bit offended by that. Not at the parent, he didn't say it, but just the idea of it. And yeah, so that's kind of the background of where that question came from, or that subject. And we wanted to talk about it 2 weeks ago, but it was towards the end of the live stream, and we didn't want to open a big can of worms and then have to sign off. So we were going to reserve it for the next one. And so here we are. So here it is, that question. What are your thoughts about that statement? Those who, it actually said, oh, he posed it the other way. He said, what are your thoughts about the statement, those who can do and those who can't teach? But usually it's put, those who can't do teach, meaning
Correct.
if you can't make it as
Yep.
succeed in whatever field that you're attempting, and your backup plan is to go teach. So Seth, do you want to start with this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but give me 1 second, because I'm going to finish this brushstroke up so where I've got it where I want it, because this is something I've been very passionate about for many years, and I want to give it justice. And I hope everybody kind of follows along with this, because I do think that this is a very interesting statement. I think it's a very American statement, if you will. I don't think it's as prolific in other countries as it is here in the States, and I'll kind of talk about that and kind of get that going. And so I'll explain why I feel that way. I'm not saying I'm correct, but I'll kind of elaborate a little bit. So first and foremost, I was a public high school educator for just under 5 years, and I absolutely love teaching. I always wanted to be a college professor, but I never thought I'd teach high school or public school or anything like that. And I fell into it and absolutely loved it, was able to get a couple of awards, things of that nature. And that led me to going to a few conferences, Chad, like industry conferences, right? But for teachers. And one of my favorite ones was being held by a group of Canadian educators and mentors and things like that. And it was a very interesting experience. It was amazing to me, because it was my first time seeing how educators are responded to in other parts of the world, right? Like really intimately, getting to listen to them and talk to them and have lunch and dinners and all that kind of stuff. And during that time, I had been teaching, I think, for 3 years, and that statement came up. Those who can't teach. And as Chad so eloquently put it, it's essentially it's a knock on teachers. It's hey, well, you couldn't cut it in the world of science, so you became a science teacher. Well, you couldn't cut it as an artist, so you became an art teacher. And it really infuriates me because that is a horrendous mindset. It's absolutely a horrendous mindset. Like, Chad, who are the greatest mentors typically?
People that are experts at what they can do.
Right. Those are typically, like, if you think of, well, if you could pick any artist in history, who are you going to mentor under?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You're going to pick the greats.
Rembrandt, Picasso, Van Gogh. Maybe not Van Gogh. He may like hover over your bed while you're sleeping, but but you're going to pick, Michelangelo, Da Vinci. You're going to pick all the greats. Gentilesca. I can never get her name right. Gentilesca, Brunelleschi. Anyways, I butcher names like crazy, but you're going to pick the greats. And if you think of it in sports, in the States, we talk a lot about sports, and you've had this saying, Chad, similarly, where great players aren't always great coaches. Have you heard that one?
Yes.
Great players aren't always great coaches. And sometimes great players are great coaches. And it's all true. But the statement should be, those who can exceptionally well can also teach exceptionally well. But the challenge with that is even if you're excellent at what you do, that does not mean you can be a great educator. Fair enough?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
So teachers in themselves are something of a unique case. They aren't somebody who just failed miserably and then teaches. And sometimes you do get that, right? Sometimes you do get teachers who fall back into teaching, especially here in the States, because we have that mindset of, oh, it's a fallback career. Oh, well, I'll fall back on this. Because we don't pay well. It's exhausting. It is one of the most taxing experiences you can have as a teacher. A lot of times you're investing your own money in your classroom and everywhere else. But the funny thing is in other parts of the world, teachers are highly revered. And a lot of cases, they're highly paid. And they're considered mentors for life. It's a highly competitive job, right? It's like, out of a first-year teacher in Canada makes twice the amount that a first-year teacher in the United States makes. And they're considered a very high-level individual. So it's a very much an American, and I'd love anybody else that's out here, VFX Time or Matt, anybody else that's, experienced it elsewhere, it's very much an American thing to think, well, those who can't teach. And even those who can exceptionally well don't always become great teachers. So none of those statements are really, really ever true. But what's really sad is that we have created a culture that diminishes the value of a teacher so much that everyone falls back on a statement like, those who can't teach. Well, is that who you want leading your children? Is that who you want educating in mathematics and science and the arts and the musical and anything? Who do you want teaching your children? I want those who can do exceptionally well and can teach even better. So we have to flip that mindset. Then all of a sudden, the pool of people that you're getting to teach are the exceptional. And they've mastered the craft of teaching, because teaching is a craft, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, it is a skill craft that is refined over time and experience. And you can see those people who do it exceptionally well. And so if we continue to cultivate this mindset of those who can't teach, well, not only is it offensive, it's also cultivating the idea that, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to teaching when I fail miserably at something, or those people are the least of the least. It's just a horrible mindset, Chad. Sorry, I went on a rant there.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I agree. I was actually looking up on the internets, and I found this article by the Huffington Post that talks about the famous artists and writers who were teachers. And I would like to list them, if I may.
Please.
I think there's, I don't know, a dozen or so. First one was Robert Frost. He's a very famous author. He taught at high school level and then was an English professor at Amherst College and secondary school. So that's pretty awesome. Georgia O'Keeffe for a couple of years. She taught drawing and penmanship in the public school. Kurt Vonnegut, I knew about this one. Kurt Vonnegut he was a famous author And what did he write?
You wrote a lot.
Catch. Yeah, I can't think. I was gonna say Catch 22, but I think that's Joseph Heller. Slaughterhouse Five. I think that's what he wrote. But either way,
I don't remember.
um, he first opened a car dealership that failed, and he also taught English and writing as well. So that's pretty cool. Corita Kent. I'm not sure exactly who that is, but she was a teacher in art school. J.K. Rowling taught
Famous one.
English as a second language in Portugal. Mark Chagall taught orphaned refugees during World War One. That's pretty cool. Joanne Harris, the author of Chocolat, but it's Chocolat. She was a teacher for 15 years. Dan Brown, who wrote all the Da Vinci Code books, he taught English and Spanish. Louise Bourgeois, she taught for several years in the public schools. William Golding, author of Lord of the Flies, was an instructor of English and philosophy. Faith Ringgold, she was pretty big in the civil rights movement. She taught art in New York City public schools. George Orwell, the famous author and of one of my favorite books, 1984, An Animal Farm. He taught high school reading and classics. Frank McCourt, that was the author of Angela's Ashes, which won a Pulitzer Prize. He taught for over a decade in New York City public schools. Philip Pullman, he's the author of His Dark Materials trilogy. He taught in middle schools in the UK and secondary school. Stephen King taught for 2 years early in his career at the Hampton Academy in Maine. Edith Head, I think we only got like 2 or 3 more. Edith Head was a French language teacher. She had a relationship with Alfred Hitchcock. She's a famous costume designer. Noah Purifoy, I don't know how to say his name, but anyways, he was famous for Outdoor Desert Art Museum. Oh, he was an artist. He also taught on the college level, and yeah, that was it. So that's
Well, you're missing two. Well, at least one ginormous one.
Oh, there's a ton on here that weren't on this list that I was thinking, even when, especially during the Renaissance era, I mean, that's how everyone got taught, was by being mentored. But who are the people you were thinking of?
J.R. Tolkien.
Oh yeah,
linguistics
C.S.
professor.
Lewis too.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have all the great. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. You would think there's a huge list that goes on there, but I think, and VFX Time said something here that I want to kind of chime in on, Chad, but thank you I could listen to that list all day, by the way.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's intoxicating to me to hear of those people because they understand the value of education and sharing of knowledge. And, VFX Time, I think you have a point here. They say that might be true if you really can't do it because of old age or your body. So you teach. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Yes, but that's where, and I think VFX Time, you're international, so there may be a difference there. But when people are saying it here in the States, they're saying it in a derogatory way. They're saying it as if, well, you couldn't cut it in your field of expertise, so you're just falling back on teaching. Not that you really wanted to teach, or that because your elements or situation are causing you to teach. It's because you couldn't cut it. It's like, well, you became a law professor because you're a crappy lawyer, right? Or you couldn't cut it in the art world, so you're going to just go and teach. And it's usually said in a derogatory way, which I don't think is a healthy manner, right? And I think if we can change that mindset, and then of course, as a country and as a culture and in different parts of civilization, you have to reward those of excellence, because then it becomes just like anything else. Then it becomes a competitive job market, right? And then you're revered at a different level. And so therefore there is quality control and excellence that is achieved. And unfortunately, it is very hard. I will tell you, the hardest job I've ever had was being a teacher. And I don't mean here at VAAS. I mean, in the traditional school system, it was one of the, if not the single hardest job I've ever had. It was difficult to do it well. Did I know teachers, Chad, that just kind of came in and clocked in and just sat there and didn't do anything? Yes, I did. Absolutely. They were there to collect a paycheck. But if you're doing it well, everybody that's watching on Instagram, X, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, anything like that, I'm telling you, one of the hardest jobs, if not the single hardest job I ever had, was being a daily teacher from 9 to 7 o'clock. It was absolutely one of the most rewarding jobs as well. And Chad, you and I experienced that here at VAAS. Sarah experiences, Thomas, everybody else involved experiences it. It's so rewarding, but it is challenging to do it if you do it well and you care as deeply as you do. And not only that, even if you're an excellent teacher, I think you have to have a level of mastery. So, I stated earlier, well, those who can, being able to teach well is a skill. But you can teach well, but if you're not a certain level of mastery in your own right, it's hard to gain the respect of those you're teaching. So you can lecture well, you can design a course well, curriculum well, you can manage a classroom well, you can work one-on-one with others well. But if you don't have a mastery of mathematics, right? Let's say you're a theoretical mathematician professor. If you don't understand or excel at theoretical mathematics, who the heck is going to listen to you? You could be the most entertaining and dynamic teacher in the world. Are they going to listen to you? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we knew a young lady, and I shared this with you some other time, but we knew a young lady who she was single and wasn't married. Obviously wasn't married. She's single, but she was not married, didn't have any kids or anything like that, and she had just this really deep desire to be a marriage and family counselor, and she was good friends with us, and so my wife and I had to very gently just say to her, like, it's going to be really hard to do that because you're not married and you don't have kids. So it's going to be really hard to speak into someone else. Like, if a married couple is coming to you with marital issues or family issues or issues with their kids, there's just going to be a level which is going to be hard to reach those people because you just don't have the experience of being married and having kids. Like you can't learn that from a book. You can learn certain principles about being married, but it's different when you're actually married. And I think it's the same thing with teaching art or, I don't know, anything, cooking or auto mechanic. Like if I try to go be an auto mechanic, it would be horrendous. Like, and no one would respect me because I have no idea what I was doing. If you walked into my class and I'm trying to teach you how to fix a car and I've got the books out trying to learn myself, they're gonna be like, "What? Why did we take this class? Like, you don't even know what you're doing."
Is this a joke?
Yeah, there's a real assumption that the teacher has mastered what they're doing, and the only way that can happen is through years and years of experience and study. And that's why I think that those who can't do teach is so, like you said, horrendous, because it's just assuming that you've failed at life, and so here's your backup plan. I will say to VFX Time, his comment where he said, because of old age or whatever, and this might contradict a little bit of what we're saying, but I have a friend of mine that teaches at the university here in town, and we were talking about teaching, and he said that at his university, there is actually a bit of respect given to the older teachers because they're older, they have more wisdom, they have more experience, and that teaching in general, and this is not always the case, but in general, has a lot of what do I want to say? Not respect, but just like that. There's opportunity for you when you're older, and I'm thankful for that because, especially in our culture in America, typically looks down on the aged people. And so I'm thankful that that is one industry, I guess you could say, or one area, career, or whatever, where there is still some respect given to older people. And I think that's awesome. And it should be that way.
I would agree. But that's the other thing I would say is I think that it's often hard too, because a lot of times, and I've shared this example before, and it's an example from Harry Potter, which is Professor Umbridge, right? Many people dislike Professor Umbridge. If you don't know or haven't read the books, she's a horrendous professor that makes life miserable for the students. And I mean, so much so that it's very, very bad. Like it's you cringe reading the passages, right? A lot of people reading Harry Potter dislike Umbridge more than they dislike Voldemort. And the reason I think that is, Chad, is because Voldemort is just evil, right? He's the representation of evil. Whereas most of us have experienced an educator, not all of us, that did not make their life easy. And so it's incredibly relatable and it's incredibly personal, which is really sad, right? It's really sad that so many people have something that they can relate to like that. And it's very tangible for them. So that to me lends itself to the belief of why or how influential educators truly are, right? Like if that's something that makes all of us hurt and feel pain is that experience of having that educator, well, then that also shows the gravitas and the weight that they can bring to someone's life and their future development and growth.
Yeah, that's
and so,
right.
you know, that's why that statement is just so tough for me, because I just disagree with it almost entirely. There are cases where, yes, those who can't are teaching because it's a fallback career and we always need more teachers, right? But man, some of the greatest minds I've ever known, and you listed a whole list of people, some of the greatest people I know, and they're not even some of the greatest teachers I've ever experienced will never go down in history books. They won't get the recognition they deserve. They won't be remembered on a list of top 50 teacher, excellence. But boy, they will be remembered in people's lives forever. They will be passed down. They will be talked about, all that stuff, that is worth more than being remembered on some kind of list from Huntington Post or whatever outlet it is. How amazing is it to influence somebody's life in a positive manner and not need or desire the credit?
Yep. VFX time asked, was it a parent that said that they're at VAAS? Well, no. The parent said it not towards us or as a bad thing. He was just it was a conversation point. He was referencing that saying, and he was agreeing that was a horrible statement. And after they left, Seth and I talked more about that and just how that is such a misconception about teachers, that it's for the people that can't make it in their industry or whatever. So,
but it is a good topic of discussion because talking about it and bringing it up and going through it helps change that mindset, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say that's also one of the things I love about working at VAAS, that Seth, from the very first time I met him, we talked about, was just the emphasis that the teachers at VAAS should be working on their own projects and drawings and paintings and that kind of thing, which I love that. And that is kind of an ethos of our school that we want, is that the teachers are always have something going, and whether it's in their classroom teaching space or somewhere in the studio, there's something up so that people, prospective students or visitors or whatever, or the students in our class can see that we're working on stuff too. It's not just us coming in and pontificating and saying, well, you should do this, you should do that. They can actually come and see, oh, you're working on this. And yeah, it's like today, I had a class and I was teaching upstairs and Seth was teaching downstairs, and he came up with one of the students who wanted to come see a drawing I was working on. And it was awesome to be able to show her, and she was so excited. It was such a compliment to me that she really likes that drawing I'm working on, and is anticipating seeing the next step. But that's good for her to see that we're working on stuff too. We're not just telling the students what to do. We're also trying to develop as artists as well.
Well, and they see the errors and the challenges and the mistakes and the growth, and I think it gives them a light to look forward to, right? Is, hey, look, I can do this as well. And not only that, her mother had came up and she had never seen it. And what was her response? She was like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yes, this is who we want your child learning from, right? And it is exhilarating in a way to be able to share that with others. And, and we are incredibly grateful for it. But the last thing I'll say about this is, I think that as time goes on, teachers will be revered again. And, there's this whole idea of, well, it'll just be AI or it'll be a virtual world, a virtual teacher. But I think that's downplaying what a teacher really is. A teacher can be replaced by something that can spout out curriculum. There are resources that can replace a teacher in a classroom, right? But what a teacher really does is motivates, inspires, shares, encourages, and cultivates. And there is a human connection that those exceptional teachers have with their students that only comes from an excellent, caring individual that is truly motivated for somebody's growth. That won't be replicated with something else. It ties into a lot of what we talk about with the soul of art, right, Chad? I mean, all these things are kind of connected. There are things that can be replaced and will be replaced. There are some things that just will not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we talked about with the invention of the camera. People thought that painting would be done with, and it was not. And then the TV came out, and you think, I don't know, I forget what that one was, but I do remember the TV or the camera coming out, and people thinking, well, that's the end of painting.
I
Well,
remember
that's
Photoshop. Everybody said Photoshop. That's
oh,
the end of
Photoshop. Yeah,
photography.
that's
You know,
right.
that's the end
Yeah,
of photography.
and that wasn't the case. And then AI come out, and people are like, well, that's the end of art. And certainly it will definitely influence and change, and it might change the industry. So you might not need as many graphic designers anymore because AI can do it. But at the same time, like you said, it can't replicate human ingenuity and creativity in the same way. And so that I don't think that will ever be replaced. And if it ever does, then that's a very sad, sad day. But
Well,
I
it's a
don't think it
sad day
will.
for you. That's a sad day for humanity because that means humanity really has gone into a different realm,
Yeah,
right?
for
We
sure.
have now created something which will happen. We have created something that will surpass us. And that scares me because then that's playing God, and that's terrifying to me,
Yeah.
which is a whole nother discussion. But anyways, Matt, that was the discussion, good sir. That was it. That was why we were so passionate about it. I think it was a good 20 minutes on just that. And that's a good discussion. You know, I've had a lot of friends that are wonderful educators, and we've sat around and had a few drinks and talked about it as well. And you know, I think it's just an interesting kind of go, if you will, of that scenario. But always something good to talk about and discuss. And Chad, I want to kind of go back to something that you and I were discussing earlier as well, which is we had a parent ask us, what direction should my child go in if they are already considered one of the best artists in their hometown?
Hmm.
And, you know, we've had this a few times, which we're very fortunate, guys, that we have some very talented young artists that have come in this facility and are taking lessons here and studying with us and studying under us. And Chad, they really are exceptional, right? But
Hmm.
kind of what comes to mind, and I want to know what you think, is I've always liked the saying, again, you know, I'm a sports guy, of if you're the best player on the field, you need to find a bigger field.
Yep.
And, you know, and there's always something to be learned, right? Ancora imparo, everybody, right? Still, we are learning. But what is your thought when a parent kind of comes in? And honestly, we've been very fortunate too, Chad, because correct me if you feel differently. The parents have come in very humbled about it. They're not saying, oh,
Yes.
my kid is just the best kid in this town and all this and this and this. They're very humbled by it. And I think their approach has been very healthy. What do you think about that? What are the positives of that? Are there any negatives? What are the challenges of having exceptional students come in? You and I have talked about some of this. You know, as a teacher, it's tough, right?
Yeah. So I think, you're assessing where that student is at. And yes, so you might have someone come in that's exceptional, and you realize, okay, they definitely don't need a drawing or painting one-on-one class. And maybe they would even surpass a level two course. Like I had a young student that was the case. I remember telling you she needs like level three or four. Like she's that good. But there comes a point in which, and we're still, it kind of is identified differently in each student, where you go from needing to be taught to more needing to be mentored or guided.
Yes.
And you have to, your job then is to teach that student how to self-study, in the sense that they need to be able to look at their own work and realize, okay, what areas do I need to improve on? And they have to be able to identify that. So you go from like teaching them how to shade something or how to draw perspective or do portraits or whatever, to, okay, you know how to draw a portrait, you know how to draw a building. Now you have to think, how do I find my voice? How do I critique myself objectively? How do I set goals for myself? How do I approach art as an artist, an independent artist, rather than um, I don't want to say rather than a learner, because you're always learning, but you just progress to this kind of what we talk about, like a studio artist, where you're now just producing. And so when we have students like that, obviously we change the lessons a little bit, to give them a little bit more independence, a little more self-focus. But for example, here's an example. So I have a very talented student in my cast drawing class, drawing from reference casts. And her issue is not so much learning how to shade or perspective or whatever. She still needs some instruction and guidance on that. But her issue is more being able to recover a bad drawing, or
Yeah.
being able to identify where she needs to fix things, or being able to identify how to measure her shading correctly, those kind of things that are beyond level one. And so I teach her a little bit differently than I would a level one student. So something like for her in our class is going to look a lot different. So you might walk into that class and we're just sitting there quietly drawing. And you might
Yep.
look at it from the outside being like, well, what teaching is going on here? They're just sitting
A
here
lot.
drawing. But she's beyond the need for a demonstration. She's more needs a challenge of, like I challenged her the other day. She was drawing a very simple drawing, but she was working on, I was having her work on shading without using an eraser and without using a blender. That she had to shade in such a way that you don't see the pencil marks, that you create very smooth gradients, and that you have a control over what you're doing. And she needed work in that. So the only way that's going to happen is if she literally sits there and draws for an hour and a half. And then at the end or throughout,
Mhm.
I'll stop and look and say, okay, how do you feel it's going? Try this, try that. But for the most part, she's doing the work for that hour and a half of our class. So if you were to walk into that class, you'd be like, what teaching is going on? And it's like, well, it's in those little moments. It's at the end when there's a critique. It's at the 15-minute mark where I'm looking at what she's doing. It's at the very beginning when I'm saying, okay, what's the next step that you're going to work on?
Yep.
So yeah, you approach each student differently. You see where they're at. You try to find where their weaknesses are, or places they need to improve. And, each student is a little bit different in what they need to work on.
But that is that teaching skill, right? That's exactly what we were just talking about.
Hmm.
That's that ability to properly assess and to provide excellent instruction. That doesn't mean that you just manage a class and lecture the same, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's where you really dive in and create an excellent, memorable experience for somebody.
Yep.
And part of it is we are a studio-based class. We're a studio-based entity. Our goal is to create in the studio, right? I mean, that's one of the big things we want to achieve,
Yeah.
and that means
And
working.
yeah, exactly. I had another student who, yeah, was once again incredible artist for her age. But the thing I noticed with her is like, she was in a level two class. And so, for example, we were talking about how you measure. And so we were doing a sight size method where you put the paper right next to the object and you have to stand back. You have to take a few steps back and look at it and then step forward and draw, but you can't draw from that position. You've got to look and then you go draw. So it develops your memory skills. Um, that was not her issue. Her issue was she could draw humans, but her human perspective and proportion was way off. And so her figure still looked a bit childish. And so it wasn't that she needed necessarily, that sight size method. She needed more like refining. And she was the kind of student, like if we went through proportions, she would be like, yeah, that's how you do it. But she needed to develop her skills in drawing the figure more, which requires just practice of observation, drawing outside, drawing from models, those kind of things. So it wasn't necessarily she needed specific instruction on how to draw proportion, right? She just needed to learn how to draw proportion. And the only way that happens is through lots and
Do
lots
it.
of practice.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, like you said, it's just different for each student. And Yeah, also, like you said, part of your job as a teacher is to identify where those areas of improvement need to be made for each student. That's your job. And so one of the things I kind of enjoy being notorious for is I always ask students, what's your least favorite thing to draw?
Yep.
And the reason why I ask that is because typically when people say their least favorite thing, it's usually because that's the thing they don't know how to draw or can't draw very well. And so they usually avoid it like the plague. And so that's typically what the next assignment will be. It's okay. You don't like drawing feet? That's what we're drawing next. And students always groan when I say that, but it's for their good because I'm like, you're avoiding that because you don't want to go through the work of trying to learn how to draw that. But that's what's required. You have to find the things that are really hard and work really hard at those things. Otherwise, you won't grow as an artist. You'll just do all the things that you're comfortable with doing, and that'll be it. And you'll stay the same artist month after month after month and year after year. And yeah.
One of the things that Professor Cummings and Coach Cummings, I always call him Coach, but my coach would always say, and it's always rang true for me, is his statement was complacency kills. Like
Yeah.
being complacent will just destroy you. It'll destroy your growth. It'll destroy so much, and he meant it as an athlete, as an artist. I mean, it was pretty much all encompassing, in the sense of being complacent will tear you down in more ways than you could realize.
Yep.
And I happen to think he was right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you, I really do not want to paint this keyboard.
Well, that's what you need. That's what you need to paint next.
That's what I'm working on, and it is kicking my butt, and I do not like it. I tell you what, guys, bear with me because this is going to be an adventure.
So VFX Time asks, what are you guys working on? So he hopped on a little bit late, so I guess missed out. So why don't you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about what you're doing? Especially
yeah,
since you just mentioned the keyboard.
yeah. So Chad talked about what he was working on just a little bit ago. VFX Time. I am working on. I've started painting in oils again a number of years back, but I had not done any portraits at all. I had done a series called My Old Kentucky Home. I did a lot of animals and a lot of objects and subjects and things like that. But I am doing a series of oil paintings, and I've decided to name it My Extra, in parentheses, Ordinary Life. And it's portraits of my children and my family life and my experiences. And it's really the first time I've painted portraits in oils in I don't know how many years, Chad, quite some time. And I'm pushing myself each portrait, right? I'm pushing myself to do more challenging things. So in the first portrait, I did a portrait of my daughter. If you guys watch the first few episodes or go back and watch them, you can see it there. And it was pretty challenging. It was good. And then I moved on to another portrait of one of my other daughters. And now I'm doing this piece to me, which is partially for me in memory, because in the early 1990s, there's this famous picture. I think they call her Game Boy Mom, I think is what it's kind of been called. And the idea is that the Game Boy, the Nintendo Game Boy, had gone into the households. But not only were kids playing it, Chad, adults were playing it. They were playing Tetris and Super Mario Brothers and some of the other games. And so the adults were playing it regularly. And in this scene, it appears to be, in this photograph, it appears to be a homemaker. And she's surrounded by all these kids in the 90s. The clothes were 90s. The hair was 90s. The mom looked like she was in the 90s. And the kids are hovering around her, watching so intently as she beats a segment of the game that they couldn't get, right? And it's very nostalgic for me of that time in my life. And I remember it so clearly. Well, at one point at home, I took this picture of my wife and my daughter. And I came downstairs and my wife was working from home on her laptop. And my daughter was staying home. I think she wasn't feeling good. And so she had her headphones on and playing the Nintendo Switch. And she couldn't get past this level. She's like, Mom, help me, help me with this. And so this picture really is, in my opinion, like a 20-year later version, if you will. I think the other one was like from 1990 something, 91, 92. And so this is like the contemporary where, she's still a homemaker, but she's working from home. And the kid now has headphones and it's a Nintendo Switch too, instead of a Game Boy or a Nintendo Switch, And so this is something, and it just captures, these two combinations to me very, very well. And so I'm working on that. And at this stage, I've done my yellow ochre underpainting or ground. I've got a lot of my grisaille on here. I've worked very heavily on a lot of elements. And I'm going now into the very geometric keyboard, which is going to be the bane of my existence. VFX time, I'm really not a fan of it. But I think if I can do it and do it well, it's going to add a really nice focal point onto this piece, because this laptop is going to be surrounded by all these beautiful undulating folds. Or if I do it well, hopefully they'll be that way. And so I really need this laptop to balance out the piece, because it's going to be, very flowy and controlled with all these elements. And so the laptop has to be executed well, or the piece isn't going to read right. You know what I mean, Chad? It's
Yep.
everything else is so rendered that if this doesn't get executed well, you're going to look at it and your mind is going to go wrong, not correct.
Yeah.
And it'll throw off the whole environment of the piece. So that's currently what I'm working on.
Yeah, and I am working on page 10 from book 3 of The Silence. And so the last time you were probably on, I was working on page 6, and I was explaining that I finished page 6, and then page 7 is a title page, because pages 1 through 6 is like an opening intro scene. So page 7 is a title page. Page 8 and 9 is going to be a double page spread, and I was kind of tired of doing all these splash pages, because that's what the first 6 pages are. So I was like, well, I want to draw a little something with some panels in it. So this is still kind of a splash page, because it's half of a regular splash scene, and then a large panel at the bottom. So it's not quite a traditional, with your 6 panels or 9 panels or whatever, but it's starting to get into that. And the next couple pages will have a lot more panels in it. So I wanted to get into some more traditional pages. And so that's what I'm working on right now. This scene right here is one of the main characters. Her name is Naomi, and she is searching through this rubble. There was a spaceship that crashed. Well, it's actually a mysterious object that the reader knows what it is, but these guys don't know what it is. But spaceship crashes into one of the buildings, and Naomi here and Dr. Polaris is the other character there in the background. They were in a building right next to it, saw the crash, and decided to come over and investigate. And so that's the beginning of this scene here, is what I'm working on. So now I'm just drawing all this random little scratch marks and everything to make all this rubble look a bit realistic. So
Texture building.
yes, yeah, and
It's exciting.
it's one of those things where it's its own art form, because there's really not it's not really a formula for it. If you look closely at some other people's, the way they do this, it's just kind of random. And so it's more just by sight. You just kind of look at it, and if you like the way it looks, you go with it. If not, it's just your personal preference, I guess. But the goal is to make it look like rubble, like a crash, like
Without
random
looking
pieces.
pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, so like pieces of wire and cement and barb, whatever you call that stuff that goes in the cement, and rebar, that's right. And just random tech pieces that look like pieces of computers and machines and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, a lot of randomness, but you're also paying attention to composition and the way your eye flows and all of that kind of stuff when you're doing this. So it's haphazard, but it's also a bit intentional too.
Well, and you've talked about this before. Some of the great artists are the ones that can do that to where it looks organic, but not placed, right?
Yes.
And, it's like that is the challenge: is how do you create something that is chaotic, even without really being from chaos, right? How do you do that?
Yep. Yeah.
And
So
then
one of the
and
ways,
then to make it look effortless on top of that.
yeah. So one of the ways I try to do that is by putting in random like lines, like directional lines or leading lines, and then I build my rubble around that. So I'll use those lines as part of the design, and I'm doing that on purpose to help frame this picture. So, up in the upper corner, I'm using some diagonals, which kind of brings your eye into the center. And I'm aware of where the focal point is. And then on top of that, you have to think you need space for dialogue balloons and that kind of thing. So like in this upper panel, I've actually drawn her 3 times now. This is the 3rd time I've drawn her. The first time I drew her too small. Second time I drew her way too big. And this one I'm a bit more happy with. And even earlier today, she was actually looking forward. And I didn't like that because both characters were looking at the viewer. And I was like, that's a bit
Ah,
boring. That's really boring. So I changed her to look back towards him, which gives it a lot more interest. It helps your eye go into the picture painting or picture panel. So yeah.
and you feel like that's much more successful, correct?
Yes, I mean, this is not a perfect page. I mean, there's some things I look at, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm 100% on that, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy with where it's going. Still got a lot of work because I got to put a lot of rubble in there, and I'm also going to put some buildings in the background, but I have to be very careful with where I place those because I don't want it to overcrowd everything. So those will probably be more in kind of a silhouette, but you've got to imagine you're inside this building looking out and there's a cityscape there. You're up high with the buildings, but there's other skyscrapers. So the background has to have some other buildings there just to give you the sense of you're up high, up in the upper levels of the skyscraper. But you also want these figures to really stand out. So you don't want to put too much detail in the background because then everything will just like, because there's so much detail in the foreground with all this rubble, if you put these really complex buildings in the background, then
Yep.
everything will get lost. It'll flatten out. So yeah, a lot of decisions to be made as I'm working on this panel.
I want to give a quick shout out. Janice joined. Janice, it's great to see you. Hope you're doing great this evening. Thanks for jumping on. Absolutely wonderful to see you both in person when you're in the studio and also on here. So thanks for jumping on and joining us. Now, I think we have another question, Chad, from VFX Time. I think potentially about you coloring your pages, which is an interesting question.
Yes. So, no, my books are all black and white except for the cover. So the covers I do color, and actually I do have
I
them
say
here.
if you don't have one easy, I'll go grab one from the shop.
No, I got one here. So here's the cover of the first one, and I did color that myself. It's a digital coloring. I just use Clip Studio Art, and that's a panel from one of the pages in the first book, and then I just took it and colored it a bit. And then the second one is colored as well, and there you see this building. This is the crash that I was talking about before, where the spaceship comes in and crash lands into the upper part of this building. So this scene that I'm drawing is this scene after all the fire went out and all the smoke cleared, and now they're sorting through the rubble to find out what happened, what crashed into this building. And it's a pretty important part of the story because in the society, it's a dystopian society, although they think it's a utopia because they've been taught to believe that no one dies anymore. And here you have this spaceship that crashes in there, and you've got to ask yourself the question: well, who is in that spaceship? Where do they come from? And did they die? And we'll find out later in the story what happens to that pilot. But yeah, so to answer your question, I like the black and white. So actually, I think I've showed this before, but you can see on the inside. Let me grab a page here. There, you can see the inside is black and white inked. That's what it'll look like.
Awesome.
And I do like the look of black and white. I actually much prefer the pencil original, but I put some of the pencil pages in the back so you can see what the originals look like. But yeah, that's and so each volume, so there'll be 4 volumes and there'll be a number of books composed of each volume will have a different color. So this first volume is red, as you saw, and then the second, third, and fourth volume will have different color just to distinguish in the story where you're at, because each volume represents a different movement. So the whole story as the overarching story is composed like a symphony. So there's 4 different movements, and that's what each volume represents. So yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. Pretty spectacular stuff. I love things that have meaning and hidden meaning and are a little bit more in depth than the reader might actually know.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
think that adds multiple layers to the story and honestly allows for multiple readings, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the viewer may never know, they may never get that layering, but it affects them. I believe it affects them. It's just like I love etymology, right? The meaning behind names, and I
Hmm.
think there's a lot there, and but a lot of the readers may never know that those names mean what they mean, right? But somewhere instinctually, or maybe on the second or third reading, or when they come back to it, Chad, as an adult, right? They may come back and go, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." It's like I'll never forget when the world realized that Diagon Alley was diagonally.
Hmm.
It was like this big, like what, and I just thought it was interesting that like, it took, well, that it took, I don't know. I think it's valuable. I think there's much more to that than people will probably give credit for.
Yeah, so in the first book, I'll show you a little page here. I kind of outline the four movements of the story, so you get
It is
kind
posted.
of
Yeah.
kind of an overarching thing, and then I also do a little postscript where I'll talk about some of the things, like for example, in the first book, in the end, I describe, like the tower, the Polaris Tower
Right.
that Dr. Polaris is in. I should say it's the tallest tower on Issachar. It represents for the people the pinnacle of scientific and technological advancement. Every society and planet has its own tower that represents the pride of the people and is noted for its height and grandeur. And you can compare this with the Tower of Babel of the Old Testament. And I also make reference to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, that's found throughout this book, and that's the central philosophical theme of this issue is humanity, or in theological terms, anthropology. So, reading The Silence in View of the Shakespeare passage is an exercise in literary theory, and the reader is forced to wrestle with what happens to a text's meaning when put into a different context. And we see this especially with the juxtaposition of scripture and pictures throughout the silence and so on. So, like, yeah, I put some of that in the back. I don't put all of it, but I do put it in there just so you, excuse me, just so you know that when you're reading this, it's on one, works on multiple levels. So, like, on one level, it's just a plain reading of a comic book, a science fiction story, but on another level,
It's deeper.
everything, yeah, everything has a layer of meaning. And I love stories like that because,
Me
just like you
too.
said, there's multiple readings. You can always go back and find something new, and yeah, you just create a very textured, multi-layered world, which I love that about storytelling.
I think that's what makes really good storytelling good storytelling. And,
Hmm.
and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that you can't just pick up an easy read, if that makes sense. I think that even easy reads can be exceptional stories and very well done.
Yep.
But I like that world building and that philosophical element that takes it further, right? And I think there's a lot to that. I mean, I do that as well with my books, Chad, like adding in some of those components. We've got Janice here who's saying, man, that's a lot of planning. Yeah, it is. But honestly,
Yeah.
Janice, in my experience, Chad, I'd like to know yours. When I write stuff like that, it kind of just flows out of you. It's a combination and a culmination of things that you know and love, and it's really nice to kind of regurgitate them in your own fashion, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like to be able to utilize that knowledge and put it out in your own story. And so, in my experience, it is a lot of planning, but it's also exhilarating and it's fuel and it's energy. And next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and this and this and this. And one of the best ways and I hate to keep, we use some of the same examples over and over, but, I remember when Prisoner of Azkaban, the third book of Harry Potter, was written, J.K. Rowling came out and said that the book wrote itself, that it was the fastest book that she wrote, and that there was just such an energy to it that the book kind of wrote itself. And Janice, it is a lot of planning, but man, when you're in the zone with it and you're feeling it, it's exhilarating to do and produce what you're producing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, you get to create your own little universe and everything. I think the hardest part for me is just keeping everything consistent within the universe.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of times I'm writing something or thinking about it or drawing it or planning it out, and I'm like, oh,
Wait a
does
minute.
this line
Yep.
up with what I said before? And like, so I've caught myself on a few things where I've done something, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. So then you've got to like figure out a way around it and change something or rearrange the story just a little bit. And but
That's where a
other
good editor comes in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I probably ought to use one of those, uh but yeah, it's a lot of fun to do, so.
It is. I think it is fun. It's like some of the most fun I have is when I get to sit down and work on the novels, and unfortunately I haven't been able to do those because of the academy in a while, but that's okay because we're telling stories here too. And it's exhilarating to see the stories that we get to create here with our students. I mean, with our work, Janice, you've gotten to be a part of it. I mean, heck, half the time class is storytelling, right? We're just telling each other stories about different adventures and experiences that we all have and creating in the same space together and all that. But at some point, I would love to get back to writing the books and composing, because I love, Chad, I love how you talked about it like a symphony. It is, you are composing the narrative, right? You're composing the components and the story, and it's exhilarating when you get to do all of that. I'm never going to paint a keyboard ever again. This is challenging.
So Janice asks, how do you both not only paint your stories, but write them? That's two different aspects of creativity, right? So I'll speak to this a bit. So my first love is definitely drawing, but my second love is definitely literature and reading and writing. And the beautiful thing about comic book art, is that you're doing both of those. You're writing and you're drawing. But even as an artist, like if you're painting or you're doing sculpture or whatever, you're still part of who you are as an artist is you're communicating your voice. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's not just about your ability to draw well, and there is a place for that. Sometimes there are some artists where that's their thing is just drawing awesome portraits or drawing amazing cars or whatever it is, and that's all they do. And that's fine. There's a place for that. But for most people as an artist, you're trying to express something about yourself or something about the world, and that is a form of storytelling. And certainly, there is a difference between writing and drawing. They're two different kinds of activity, but they stem from the same creative source. And so
Agreed entirely.
when you write a story, you're still envisioning something, but you're expressing it with words rather than with forms on a page or on a canvas. But it still requires you to be able to translate what you see in your head and translate in a way that someone else can also see it, whether it's by using words or pictures. So there's definitely some distinct differences, but there's a lot of similarities between the two as well.
I want to chime in on that, but I'm going to try to finish this key before I lose it. Janice, be patient with me. I'm going to try to get this here, and then I'll come back to that.
Yeah, so I'll say a couple more things while you're drawing. So one of the things that I love about literature, for example, is the way in which an author can put a picture in your mind by just using words. And the best ones are the ones that can do it with few words or just well-placed words, well-crafted words. Now, of course, there are some artists or authors that use a lot of words. And then but it does amaze me the ones that can just get right to the point and just put a picture in your mind just by using words. And there is a definite art and skill to that just like with drawing can partly be taught, but part of it is just who you are as an artist. Everyone's a little bit different, and you can give an author the words to use, but every author is going to string those words together in a different way. And some are going to be more effective than others. And by effective, I mean just in the sense of being able to communicate or paint a picture in your mind. And it's the same with artists. You can have one artist that will use tons of detail and make beautiful artwork, and then there's others that can do something abstract and very very simple.
Yep.
And it looks amazing. So yeah, just the examples I often think of is T.S. Eliot, who I'm not a T.S. Eliot expert. I've read part of some of his poetry, and I'm not a big poetry fan. But there's just something about his poetry that, 80% of what he writes I don't understand. I need a commentary or something to really understand what he's doing with his words. But there's just those few poems that I'll read, a couple lines here and there, and it's like I don't know what he does with words, but it just opens up this thing in my brain where I can see it. Like he'll just say a few words about it, like a gaslight lamp and a woman calling out the window and just the dankness of that, and you just all of a sudden get this picture of this alleyway with that's dark because it's using gaslight, and it's dank, so it's probably just rained, and it's like the air is really heavy and moist, and this woman calling out there, and you just start envisioning it, and it's only like 2 lines of the poem, and you just
Yep.
see it, and to be able to do that is just incredible. Yeah, so I don't know if you have something to add.
Which to me is exactly what I was going to say, Janus, because I agree with everything Chad had said, but I was going to go a little bit further. And Chad, it's what you just ended with is something I was going to articulate. Is there's a different kind of joy I receive from writing rather than drawing and painting, and it's exactly what Chad was saying that T.S. Eliot was able to do for him, which is when I paint or draw, people see the painting right away. Right? Like there is an interaction there. There is their own interpretation. I tend to do more realistic art, right? I'm not, Janice, you know this, I'm not a full-blown abstract artist, right? Do I do things that are loose and painterly and impressionistic? Yes, sure, I do. But usually when I'm creating visually, when I'm doing visual art, it's something that people can look at and then interpret, and they have a pretty good idea of what I'm putting out there, right? One of the things I love about writing is that, yes, I can paint a picture with words, right? But there is a whole different relationship to the reader that is different than a viewer. And I think that is one of the fun concepts for me, is that you can develop this world, but there's a certain aspect that the reader is building with you and with the words that you're using and creating. Does that kind of make sense, guys? Like it's more of an indirect but direct relationship that happens. And there's a connection that can take place, just like Chad was saying. He can see it in his mind, but it's in his mind, right? And the way that he sees it in his mind is not going to be the same as somebody else that may read that. And I think there's a beauty of that. And is it different aspects of creativity? I'm going to reiterate what Chad said, which is, to me, it's narrative, it's storytelling. That's all it is. To me, it's just different facets of storytelling. One of the things that I love doing, Janice, is I love acting, but I've never acted like for real, but I love acting, the idea of acting, of telling a story through your body and through your performance and your voice. I love singing. Chad's wife is an amazing singer, and I wish I could sing. I would always want to sing because it's storytelling. Any aspect, I think, and Chad, I feel like you're probably kind of like this too, in a certain extent. You just want to tell good stories. No matter what the delivery is of that story, you just want to tell an amazing story, and you want to share your ability to tell stories with others. And I think that's really what it comes down to me. I don't care what medium it is, Janice. I don't care, what the delivery of it is. I just want to tell really good stories.
Yep. 100%.
Great question. Thank you, Janice. And thank you, Chad, for elaborating on that to the extent that you did. It's awesome. Man, this is amazing.
Thanks.
So good. I'm going to have some candy. It's getting there, Chad, but it is slow going.
Yep, I feel the same pain. I'm working on this rubble, and yeah, it's a big mess of lines right now that needs a lot of work. So
I'm going to share something, right, as hopefully like a teaching moment. And Chad, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So right now I am not tired. Well, I am tired, but I'm losing energy on painting these keys on the keyboard. And so I have options, right, Chad? I can persevere, I can keep going, which there's a lot to be said about that, don't you think? I mean, push through it, revel in the pain, keep it going. And I've kind of figured out my methodology. So do I want to lose that methodology or step away? So you could persevere and push through. There's also the idea of, well, okay, I want to keep painting, so paint another part of my piece, right?
Yep.
Nobody says you have to go straight through and paint every key on the keyboard, and you can step away and move away and kind of bounce back to that. And so, you get to say, well, maybe, you know what? I'm losing a little energy on that. How about I move to a different area? What if I focus on the hair now? What if I go back in and do this or the folds? There's other aspects that you can move to, right? And I think a lot of times we're like, oh, no, and then you lose momentum entirely, and then you just kind of stop. And so something to think about, guys and gals, is you can bounce around to other areas and emphasize some of those, or keep working on some of those other areas, and maybe that'll re-energize you, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a drawing at home that the other day on Facebook gave me a 1-year anniversary of it, and it's sat there. Yeah, it's sat there for many, many months, and I've not really touched it because it's about a 5.5, 6 foot tall drawing of my wife and I as Adam and Eve.
I know that one.
And the tree, I'm literally drawing every tree leaf. And it is monotonous is a nice word to say, that you just get to a point you're like, I have no desire to stand up again. And I literally have to stand up on a step stool to do it. I'm like, I don't really want to get up there and draw a bunch of leaves. But every time I look at it, I'm like, if I don't do it, it's just going to sit there for another year and it's not going to get done. So you just need to get up there, force your way through it. And once that part's done, then you can move on to some other parts that you really want to get to. So yeah, I totally agree. You're in control. You don't have to, you can draw what you want, when you want, whenever you want, unless of course it's a commission, but
that's right. Or your employer. Yeah. Unless you're doing commercial work, right? That set design has to be done. You better get it done. Yeah. But I also, I don't know if Matt's still on or not, but I wanted to give a shout out to Matt. I got to see an image of his work, Chad, and it's, I believe it's a commission piece, and it's looking awesome. I think he's doing a very nice job. It's lovely. I think it's looking really, really, really strong. And Matt, I just wanted to give you a shout out. I had talked about it a few weeks back of being excited to see what you're working on, and I finally got a glimpse of it, and super exhilarating, super cool. Really excited for you, bud. I hope it's going well because it's looking awesome so far. So great job. I love seeing everything everybody's working on. I had a student come in today, and I'm going to share this story. They literally told me that they weren't going to sign up for any more classes, Chad. They were like, I'm kind of done. I've done this and I've done that, and whatever. And they recently took an oil painting class, and the first few classes were pretty good, right? I mean, really good stuff. But then it was class number 4 that they did an underpainting. They did an imprimatura, right? The loose, wet underpainting. And boy, it just flew out. I mean, Chad, you just saw it come to life. It was amazing. It was like, here it is. Look at this. And next thing you know, the whole class. And boy, that classroom environment, right? That studio environment, everybody's going, whoa, this is nice. This looks awesome. And it was so nice, so much that we even told this individual, this student, to not put the final painting on it, just to leave it as the imprimatura. It was so lovely, so loose, so nice.
Yeah.
But then you're gonna love this because this is very much a Chad thing. I looked at him and said, "Now do it again."
Yeah.
I said, "Now do it again." And you know what's amazing? The second one was as good, if not better.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they come in 24 hours later, first thing in the morning, right as we open up. Look what I did. They had painted the whole thing a third time. And it was amazing. It was awesome. Next thing you know, 24 hours later, they come in with 2 new paintings. And that is the power of persistence and continuing. Yep. Imagine if you actually did say, I'm just not doing it anymore. I'm just done. And sometimes stopping, I'm not saying is a bad thing, okay, ladies and gentlemen, but in this case, I think it is. And she would not have experienced that joy, that camaraderie, that success. And she came back in today and showed me a couple of other paintings, and she goes, "I'm just so glad I've got my mojo back," right? Yeah. And I'm like, it was never gone. It just wasn't showing itself the way that it had before.
Yep.
And that's okay. You know, that's okay that you weren't experiencing it the way that you had before, but you've got it back and ride that wave, because we all have creative down spurts, if you will,
Yep.
but I'm so ecstatic. I've been, riding high on this energy, because it's just, as a teacher, Chad, you get it. It's great when you see that joy, when you see that success come.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was awesome. Super awesome. And now you got me thinking I need to persevere on this.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, just keep going. Keep going. Push on through. That's a nod to 21 Pilots and my wife.
No, I thought it was the Doors. Push on through to the other side.
Oh, that would be a good one too. No, it was 21 Pilots, and they have it's actually a really cool song. It's like, to push on through the persistence of like all the stuff you have to do in life, right? Like, the depression and everything else that comes from the stresses of life.
Mm-hmm.
Or like painting keys on a keyboard. I did this if Chad, if you remember, this was early in the live stream and early in VAAS's existence. I did a class where we had to paint birds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I told myself, why am I painting all these feathers? I'm in charge of picking the class content. Why did I pick birds? I was painting feathers after feathers after feathers. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. But it turned out really nice. It was worth it. Oftentimes, the hard things are some of the ones that are the most rewarding, right, bud?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be working on this painting again. I mean, it's been what, 3 weeks longer, maybe, since I've been able to work on this painting.
Yeah, because was it last week? Last week was me and Sarah.
Yep.
And then the week before that we didn't have it, and then the week before that was me and you, right?
Yeah, it's super nice to be back. And just like that, I'm sitting there going, those are some good keys. All right.
Those keys do look really good.
I'm like, it's getting there. It's getting there. They're falling off a little bit. Got to fix it. Yep, there we go. I had an interesting conversation with one of my students. They were asking me what my favorite cartoon was. And this really tripped me out so much that I had to go home and call my brother. And Chad, I mean, I know you're a little bit older than I am, not much, but a little bit older than I am. But I don't know if you would remember this cartoon or not. But if you're watching or listening, or if you watch this later, I want to know your thoughts. And so the student asked me what my favorite cartoon was. And if you've ever been in the studio or know me, I immediately said, probably X-Men. And she goes, that's not a cartoon. And I said, well, yes, it was in the 90s. She goes, oh, well, yeah, okay. And then as she said that, I said, actually, you know what? There was a cartoon that I grew up on. And this is almost how this conversation went, almost verbatim, Chad. I said, it was a cartoon about a little gnome. And she goes, oh, you mean David the Gnome? And I said, yes. How do you know about that? Because it was only 20 episodes long. Yeah. And it was not the most popular show of the era. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you know that? And she's like, well, what do you mean? She's like, of course I know that, David. I'm like, no. And she goes, yeah, oh yeah. He had a fox named Swift that he used to ride on, and he went around and helped people of the forest. And at the end of the show, he died and turned into a tree along with his wife. And I'm like, How do you know this? And I remember it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I said, I had forgotten the traumatic experience of watching this wonderful, helpful, wonderful gnome,
Yeah.
you know, and passed away and turned into a tree. I had blocked it out of my mind, Chad, because it was so traumatic for me as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm going, how do you know this? How is this something you know? And she goes, oh, it's in the top 10 cartoons of all time dealing with death. And I'm like, oh my
wow.
gosh.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm like, this is amazing. And so I pulled it up and I watched it, right? I watched the ending of the show and I'm like, this is exactly how it's coming back. It's flooding back after 35, 36 years. It's flooding back. And I started to get teary eyed. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I looked at the comments and she goes, let's read the comments. And I looked at the comment. And the first comment says, I'm 41 years old and I'm crying. I'm like, who wrote that? I didn't write that. That's me. That's like exactly, I'm 41 years old watching this crying. And I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. And I went home and I called my brother and told him, and he goes, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, oh man, this is amazing.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, there's the chances of her knowing exactly what that was amazing. You know what I mean?
That is
like,
amazing.
I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with that one.
It was a really great show. I mean, it was really kind, and I mean, it reminded me of a lot of like, the kind of hippie era, the 70s and 80s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was really great. I mean, it was really beautiful, and really the ending. I mean, yeah, you could see why it probably won, one of the top 5 that deal with death and stuff like that. But I mean, dude, it was. And I rewatched it. I'm like, it's even worse now as an adult than it was when I was a kid. I'm like, you're like, oh my gosh. Like, who let us watch this stuff? Latchkey kids, you know what I mean? Come home when the street lights are on.
Yeah, yeah.
If anybody out there knows what I'm talking about, I'd love to know your thoughts. I used to love that cartoon, and it was amazing. But yeah, the ending was just gut-wrenching. Oh. And I'm going to share this too, which is probably a little too much, but for the longest time, I always wanted, like, if I were to die, I always wanted to, like, I like the idea of the poetry of being buried as like with a tree bulb, but like, you know what I mean? Like the idea of returning to earth and nature. And I know that, the body doesn't really like cultivate any of that or whatever, but I always like the idea of it. And now I'm realizing, I'm like, that's because David the gnome. That's because they turned into trees at the end. Like, oh my gosh. Jeez. But it was a fun experience to get to share that with her. You know what I mean? Like, and I thought it was funny. Are you crying? No, I'm not. But you're crying. So I listened to the new 9 Inch Nails album for the new Tron.
Oh.
I'm nervous.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm nervous.
That's sad.
Yeah. I was hoping that,
What is it, like super like light and poppy and
No, it's not. I mean, a couple of tracks are kind of really 9 Inch Nails-ish,
Yeah.
And you have to remember, obviously, this is a score, right? So it's not a full-blown 9 Inch Nails album.
Yeah.
I do think it's good. It definitely feels like a little bit of a merger of the previous score, you know what I mean, from Daft Punk.
Yeah.
Like, there's components of it which I actually really like because it's kind of that continuation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's funny to me because I remember I listened to a couple of tracks. I'm like, oh yeah, this is 9 Inch Nails from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But then it also wasn't quite as hard as the stuff from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it felt like a much softer version.
Yeah.
Which it probably has to be, right? Disney movie, musical score, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm really freaking out about the delivery from Jared Leto. The fact that they're not bringing back the 2 main characters from I know it's a reboot, right? But it should be a continuation. They should bring them back. And I'm curious to see how the score connects with the visuals, because I feel like the score very much is going to influence the visuals. So it may be even better like paired up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But as a standalone, I was just a little there's like 2 or 3 tracks that I thought were really, really strong.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, I was unenthused, I guess, to say the least.
You got me intrigued now. I'll have to check that out.
Of course, now, but I say that, but in all fairness, I need to re-listen, a few times. I don't think always the first listening is always your best, digest. Sometimes it is. I mean, your first instincts are good, but I think, there's some more digestion that needs to take place.
Yeah. VFX time is funny. He says, days without talking about Tron, 0.
That's right.
That's
Like
right.
you said, VFX time. I named one of my daughters after a character from there. Not because I love the movie so much, but because I love that quote that was said about the character. I just think that's one of the coolest quotes ever, especially being delivered by Jeff Bridges.
Which one is that?
I don't have it verbatim, but I'm pretty close. It's she's unique. She's one of a kind. She's bio-digital jazz.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
And I remember going, that's going to be my daughter. Unique, one of a kind, and bio-digital jazz. Ooh, we are super focused tonight, aren't we?
Yeah, I need to turn the light on. It's getting darker earlier.
Or I remember when Thomas was here visiting, last week or a week and a half ago or however long ago it was, he was talking about how down in Costa Rica it's dark all the time at 5:30.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, oh, that would
That's
be awful.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's coming our way. It gets like that in the wintertime.
Yeah. But because they're so close to the equator, it's like that's all the time. And I'm like, nope, no, thank you. But I guess you do get used to it, right? I mean, I guess they don't have the daylight savings challenges that we have, having to reset your internal clock all the time.
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum. Oh, I messed up this one key. Come on.
So VFX time is asking, how's the volume of students? Do you get a lot? Like, are the seats always full?
Well, that's a great question, VFX time. And so we are growing very, very well. I would say that we have probably 4 full classes. Our classes cap out at 12 students. So we have a pretty good student to teacher ratio. We have, quadrupled enrollment since we opened, I think. And so I think that's, I would consider that VFX time a very, very good thing. And part of the reason I think that's a very good thing is not only because it's our studio and our business, but because that means that the community is growing, right? The student experience that they get to have by having more classmates. We're going to do our student exhibition here at the end of October. So VFX time will probably go live from that. Chad did it last time. And Chad, I thought that was a great success.
Yep.
I'm hoping that you're willing to do that again.
Yep.
And VFX time, I think you're probably going to see close to, probably 80 to 90 works of art in the student exhibition, which will be by far our biggest exhibition that we have at the end of our semester. And the community and the culture is growing rapidly. We've got more and more creators. We've got a lot of our students that are putting their books in our shop that they've either written or illustrated. We've got a number of creators putting out some of their handmade custom sketchbooks and watercolor sketchbooks, which just keep flying off the shelves. And we continue to add other instructors. We're getting ready to announce an additional instructor, Carla Wallace, who has been a college professor for, I think, over 20 years. She focuses on multicolor works and ideation and illustration. We're looking at potentially adding some other individuals. And so, we are going to be celebrating, a year in 2 or 3 weeks, I think, 3 weeks, something like that. And we're very, very excited that the community at VAAS continues to grow, and the relationships that people are developing and having, and the growth that we have. It's amazing, and it's a blessing, and we're just incredibly excited to see it. And I think that AI, VFX Times here is saying it's amazing still seeing people interested in art with all these AI things happening. Yes, but I think more and more, the more disconnected there's a human connection that's desired even more relevantly, or I don't even, relevantly is probably not the word, more passionately. People want to create. They want to be creative. And when you have so many resources that can just do it for you instantaneously, the ability to do something organically becomes more prolific. So one of the ways I equate this to is, and I hope this makes sense, and Chad, I hope you would agree with me. It's amazing the digital music that can be made. The fact that you can hear a digital string of a violin and it sounds beautiful, right? Right on pitch, right on cue. And you can make symphonies digitally with a keyboard and synthesizers and a catalog of instruments and things of that nature. It's absolutely amazing. But when you go and sit 2 rows in front of a master violinist, and you can see the passion and the practice and the energy and the realness of the strings vibrating through the air and piercing your ears to your mind, no digital violin can replicate that. And I think that's the same thing with art. And so VFX Time, I think more and more people, as we get further into this digital and AI component, the realness is going to have so much more substance and so much more joy and so much more expression. And the internal, we are called to create. We are creative beings. And the call to create is just going to exponentially grow from everyone. And VAAS is a community where people can experience that. At least I believe that. Thanks, VFX Time. I'm sold. Well, good. I mean, I think, Chad, would you agree? That's what we've built and cultivated here.
No, I disagree with everything you just said.
It's such a turd. I told him his name is going to change. His name is going to change because he's no longer a humble wizard. He's just an evil wizard. I'm going to change it to evil wizard.
Well, the problem was you said, and Chad, I hope you agree. As soon as you said that, I was like, nope, I'm not going to agree with you. No, I definitely 100% agree. It's like anything else we talked about earlier. When new technology comes out, there's always, the doomsayers that think that, well, that's the end of art. That's whatever. But it's exactly like Seth said. Even if AI and technology can closely replicate that, there's just the human element you cannot get away from. That people will not. They won't let go of that. So there's definitely a place where technology is really helpful and that kind of thing, but there's just the human element. What were you gonna say?
I was going to go a step further. VFX Time, if I could tell you how many people have come into this place in the last year that have been struggling in some way, that have lost a loved one, a spouse, a child, people that are struggling with illnesses, like serious illness or sickness, people that are dealing with the stresses of life or financial or just in general, just life. Life is hard. We live in a fallen world, and they come here not because AI can create an image or there's a digital something. They come here because their soul needs it. And they need that outlet. They need that camaraderie. They need to create. And it's incredibly therapeutic. It's incredibly profound. And when you have a space that allows people to grieve, to explore, to escape in some cases, Chad, I think that's a good way to put it sometimes too.
Yeah.
A safe place to escape. There is nothing greater as someone providing a service, in my opinion. And we are providing a service to everyone that comes through these doors. And no matter how much Chad teaches them how to draw more eloquently or accurately, or how I teach them to paint expressively or skillfully, that all pales in comparison to what they're able to do. And there's no amount of digital space or digital creation that can do that for them. It's just not. And that is where I sit outside before I open these doors almost every morning. And I just say a prayer of thank you. Thank you for letting this place exist. Thank you for letting us open our doors every morning. Because as much as it means something to myself and Thomas and Zach and Michelle, my wife, Chad, his wife, Sarah, and her partner, and everything else, it's for everybody that comes through these doors. And there's nothing like it. Mm.
VFX time says, "Can we have a round of applause?" Yeah, that was a great word. It's not much to say beyond that. That's why I think we're both quiet. It's like, yep, exactly. That's exactly right.
Way too kind. I think the great thing is Chad, that's, and not because I said it, but it's the truth. And that's why it always feels so good, doesn't it, bud?
Yep.
I didn't mean to kill the vibe, though. Sorry, everyone.
Man.
Anyways, I will tell you what, I am so grateful and glad that I pushed through and did 5 more keys. I feel so good that I got those 5 keys done. I tell you what, it's a challenge to do this. It is tough, but I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. We've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to take this full screen here for you guys for a second. And you guys can see, oh, wait, we got a question. So let's see here. What do we got? I understand the soft leather at the end of the stick doesn't ruin the painting. Well, it's twofold. If the painting's still wet and dry, then if the painting's still wet, you're going to smudge it. And so a lot of times, VFX, you can't see this here, but I'm going to try to do this. A lot of times you'll actually rest it up on the top. And so it's not hitting the painting itself. Or a lot of times I'll put it way up there. I don't know if you can see that at the top of the easel. So that way it's not even touching the painting at all. But if I do have to touch the painting, you are correct in the sense that having this softer element, I used to use like a soft paper towel before I could afford an actual maul, but I'll put it wherever I'm not painted already. But if I do have to put it there, it's not gonna smudge as much if it's dry. Now, if it's wet, it's going to give you a really, muddy mix. It's going to ruin it. But yeah, it does help having that soft little bit there. But yes, you typically want it to be dry before you use a maul on there, or place it somewhere where you're painting on your easel or on your painting that is not going to be affected by that. I'm going to take this off, see if you guys can get this a little bit closer. Here we go here. So this is what I was working on all day today, which is fun. Let's see if you guys can see that.
Oh.
And so I got the trackpad and I got the first few keystrokes, and I think they're looking Pretty good. I'm not expecting them to be photorealistic. I still like everything being painterly and expressionistic. I want it to have a certain level of realism, which you can see here in the hands, right? Hopefully you can see those guys. I think that's turned out really, really nicely. And a big component is going to be the hair, and I want to make sure I get the hair correct. And so I'm kind of working some of this other space just to see how loose I want to be with the hair, but I'm really honing in on that. I don't know if this helps to see things a little bit more closely, but you can see that component of the laptop is going to be a really important part when it comes to life. And so this is a pretty healthy size painting, definitely on the larger size for me, which is really nice, but it allows me to get in there and paint those folds and get some of the details going and really be detailed in the areas that I want to be detailed. So very excited. And Chad, thank you for encouraging me, as you do so many of our students, to persevere and keep working on those keys. Not that it would have been a bad thing to step away, but I'm really glad I got 5 more of those done, and I feel really, really, really good about it. And thank you, VFX Time. Thanks for liking the painting. I'm glad you like it so far. Chad, I'm going to take yours full screen, see what you think, see what you've got going there. Talk us through it, my friend.
All right. Can you hear me? I had to mute for a second.
Yep, you're great.
Okay, cool. All right. Yes. So this is page 10. As you can see up here on this top scene, there's Naomi in the midst of all this rubble and just wreckage, and she's looking back there at Dr. Polaris, and he's kind of standing silhouetted. He's got some kind of robots floating over him that's doing some scanning. And so the top, up in the corners, I'm going to add some more of that rubble just to kind of frame it. And then way in the background, I'll probably do some silhouetted buildings or whatever just to give it a little bit of depth. And I've got it's kind of a mess right now, so I'm losing some of the different layers with all of that, all of the marking and all that kind of thing. But I'm gonna go in there and kind of clean some of that up and use some of the tones and things like that to separate the layers. So that's the main thing I worked on. And then, like I said before, this bottom scene is kind of from the top looking down over the shoulder of Dr. Polaris. He's looking down at he found the door to the spaceship, so that'll be the next thing I'll work on. But this week, hopefully I'll get some time to work on this a little bit, just clean it up a bit. And we're coming along, so got a lot of work done today.
That's awesome, and a great conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which is always fun. I'm just so grateful that we actually got to do this again. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be Chad and Sarah again, which we're super excited about. Believe it or not, just as I was listening to Chad, I got to check my phone, and Sarah just sent over some work that she's working on one of her classes. And guys, it's spectacular. I'm absolutely blown away. It's absolutely amazing. I'm going to see if maybe she'll share some of that with you guys next week, because I have a little girl's birthday party to go to, and I am not going to miss it. So I will not be here next Saturday, but Chad and Sarah are going to take you through it with another episode of VAAS Live. It's been an amazing evening. I think I teared up twice. I apologize for that, but I got super, super carried away. Hold on. We got a last-minute contributor here. Make sure you see it, Chad, because it's
yes.
buddy.
Patricia, my oldest friend. Hey, Chad, I miss that you miss me, and I definitely miss you. I was actually thinking about you the other day. Our schedules are a little bit different right now, so I miss seeing you at the school, but thank you for the comment. It's always good to hear you chiming in a little bit, so thank you for that, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
You missed me talking about somebody getting their mojo back earlier, Patricia, and Chad, I can't wait for you to see the paintings that she's working on. They're absolutely spectacular. I think you're going to be incredibly pleased with her growth and everything that she's doing. It's been amazing. But Patricia, you kind of caught us at the end here. We're wrapping up for the day. Chad and I have been painting and drawing for 2 hours. We got a lot of great conversation. VFX Time, how wonderful it is to have you on here. Matt, Janice, Patricia, everybody else, Martha, Tom Tubb, Melissa, and Viola, and the Selby, everybody. You guys have been absolutely amazing. We're so grateful for you guys. Check in next Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. for another wonderful episode of VAAS Live with Chad Nuss and Sarah Nicole. We will see you guys next. Well, I won't see you guys next week, but they will see you guys next week. Thank you guys for a wonderful evening. Chad, anything you want to add, brother?
No, you said it great. It was an awesome conversation and always a good time drawing together. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We will see you guys next week. Have a good night, everyone.
See y'all.